today I'm going to be talking about security. And I made the title kind of ambiguous in the sense that I wasn't really sure if I wanted to make this talk one where I went through and kind of taught you about security, or if I wanted to make it something that I talked about the security industry. And so I said, learn to hack. And so what I've decided at the end is that this is a title that is to encourage you to learn to hack from the information I'm going to provide you today. And I've actually split this talk up into two different sections, sort of. So at the beginning, we're going to have the presentation, and then afterwards, we're going to have a capture the flag event. And so with the CTF event, it will take place at about 3 o'clock, I think. I'll have a decent amount of challenges up there, but about a 3-hour CTF. And so this will be an opportunity that you can kind of try some of these newer ideas that I might have exposed to you in the security environment. Antelope, would you mind just muting yourself on Discord? Oh, that's 1 sec. My bad. That was the video still playing. All right. So to start, hello. My name is Forrest. So I'm a 6-year student. As Alexa mentioned, I've been here a while. And I'm in the game development stream, but since first year I've been doing CTFs and I've been involving myself in the security world. With the CTFs and stuff that I have gone to, it's taught me a lot about security, and so I know a lot of it from a hacker standpoint, from an industry standpoint, and then from an academic standpoint as well. And I just want to check if anybody's able to use the Google Slides thing, if they want to just type anything so that I can see that is popping up in the questions. If not, I'll just ignore it. But wait, yeah, okay, questions on. Oh, nice. We got some yeets in chat. Very cool. Very cool. All right. So this talk, I'm sort of split up into 4 different sections, and so we're going to start out by discussing what exactly is hacking. Then we're going to go into the cybersecurity world a little bit. And see what's going on over there. We're going to take a look at how you can make money in the cybersecurity industry, and then we're going to finish off with how you can learn more yourself. So first of all, what is hacking? And so we're going to explore the world of breaking and entering. And so first of all, we have a pretty standard definition of hacking, just kind of something you find online. And so just kind of boiling down to what I could kind of consider a general definition. And so hacking refers to activities that compromise digital devices. And so essentially the scope that we're looking at is hacking in the digital sense. And these attacks can be motivated for a couple different purposes. And I think this kind of encompasses all of them, or at least if you find any purpose, you can put it into one of these categories. So we have financial gain, political gain, information gathering, and fun. And so, for example, most hackers that you'll see in the news are often doing it for financial or political. And then on the other hand, we're going to explore some ways that people go into doing it for fun and doing it for information gathering. So first off, let's take a look at the different types of hackers. So first of all, we have 3 different general hackers that we kind of look at. So we have the white hat, the gray hat, and the black hats. And I made black red because it wouldn't fit nicely on the background. And so the idea behind each of them is that they kind of describe a different intention behind a hacker. And so first of all, with the white hat hackers, you have the academics, so the people doing security research. You have the people doing working at companies, protecting infrastructure and stuff like that. And so the people who are working on a defensive side. Then you have the gray hat hackers. And so these ones are, actually, let's go black hat first. Black hat is the people who are doing it unlawfully, breaking into companies, and the kind of stuff that would get you arrested. Now, gray hat is in the middle because this is the type of people that are supposed to be doing the stuff that black hat hackers are doing, but is sanctioned by companies that allow it. So, for example, you might have a company that hires a hacker to come in and try to access their system or get some important information that they shouldn't be able to. So sort of the question behind hacking that a lot of people have is this even legal? And so the thing with hacking is that when you are doing it for your own education, and when you are doing it to either like help companies, or like when you're at a company and you're just trying stuff against that company. If you're doing it in a way that's sanctioned by the thing that you are attacking, then it is fine, and it is normally good. And we're going to explore sort of that world of where is it allowed. Now, on the other hand, of course, like for the illegal side of things, when you're accessing stuff that you shouldn't, and you're accessing stuff that is unsanctioned, many companies make it very clear what is sanctioned, what is not sanctioned. And so for the scope of this talk, we're going to stay within the white hat and gray hat regions. We're not going to discuss too much about the black hat. So essentially, what we are going to be discussing within that umbrella is the idea of cybersecurity. And so with cybersecurity, this is a pretty big umbrella that covers a lot of different things. For many different companies, this can include data protection, prevention against attacks, and many other fields. And so it's like just kind of this all-encompassing term. So we'll take a quick look at what it means to compromise a digital system. So in the sense of hacking, what exactly does that mean? So here are a couple of different examples of types of attacks, and I think that most things that you could have would generally fit into these categories. And so the most active, or the most popular one that most people think of, is the idea of pwning, which generally means that you have access to a system that you shouldn't, or you get escalated privileges somewhere that you shouldn't be allowed to. A description of that is getting unauthorized access onto their servers. Phishing is a pretty big one as well. It's sort of similar to social engineering. However, phishing is about collecting secret information sort of at mass, whereas social engineering is about trying to go and convince people who have access to secrets that you are someone who should be knowledgeable of these secrets. And then finally, sniffing. So sniffing is very passive. It's kind of what happens when there's like leftovers from like anything that is happening at a company. So for example, any network use that you can see that they're doing, or any emails that you might have access to that they leaked or something like that. So that's the idea of sniffing. And so these kind of encompass a lot of different aspects of hacking. And I think that most of the stuff that you would explore in either many different classes or many different CTFs or anything like that would fall into likely one of these categories. All right, so next up, we're going to take a look at the cybersec world. And so I think this one's pretty exciting. This is kind of looking at, or maybe someone with like an uneducated view of what cybersecurity looks like in the real world, because oftentimes you'll read something in the newspaper about something being hacked, but that doesn't mean very much. You don't really get to go behind the curtain. So we'll take a little bit of a look at that. So first of all, let's start with some stats. And so these come directly from the government of Canada. So we have a couple of different main points here. The fact that Canada spent $14 billion on cybersecurity in 2017, and that was a couple of years ago. So if we compare it like to the trends of how much cybersecurity is increasing, which we'll see in some later slides, many companies have gone up since then. We also see that about 57% of Canadian internet users reported experiencing cybersecurity incidents. And so these were like very general surveys done by StatsCan, so lots of information here. Also, 21% of businesses were impacted by cybersecurity incidents in 2017. And finally, since I'm using a template and I didn't change the last one, Neptune is the farthest planet from the sun. That's my bad. I forgot that I was supposed to add 4 facts here. So essentially, it's very interesting because in the industry of cybersecurity in particular, we've seen an exponential growth over the last about decade, because as many companies are entering like the cyber world at a much greater level, then many companies are starting to look for new ways to make sure that they are secure. All right, so let's take a look at live attacks. And so this is the idea of sort of how you capture data that is happening right now in the world across the internet. And so I was checking with some articles to try and find some stats about this, but one thing that I don't really like about a lot of articles is that they kind of flash like really big numbers in front of you that really don't often mean what they say. So for example, this one, hackers attack every 39 seconds. And so that was one that I found across like several sites. And it was from this study at some university in America, I'm not sure, Maryland or something like that, where they were doing a test to see kind of, so they had a computer in a lab, they were running some software on it that was vulnerable, and they opened it to the internet. And they found that there was an attacker hacking it every 39 seconds. But then a lot of people take this out of context and say, oh, there's a hacker getting access to stuff every 39 seconds. That's literally what some of the websites say. And so I find that very odd that websites will kind of just flash off these numbers, even though they're completely out of context and don't make any sense. And these are very objective numbers. These are numbers that are coming from like a very objective science. And so it's very interesting how they flash all of this stuff off. And so just as an example, for some of the servers I'm running for the CCSS, we can see the logs, and I can see different bots hitting different paths that tend to be like, if there's a leak or something like that, then it will be like that. So like something like WordPress/admin, whatever. And so that happens probably like once a minute. And so if we're talking at the world scale, then the thing about 39 seconds, it might sound impressive to people, but that is not at all what is happening. And so let's take a look at how we collect some of this information, because if we're talking about the World Wide Web and we're talking about all the possible things that are going around the internet, then how can you really keep track or get sort of an estimate of what is happening around the world? And so we have a couple of different techniques that we use. And so I'm going to explore three of them here, and I think these are like three pretty standard ones across a lot of like InfoSec. And so first off, we have honeypots. And so the idea behind a honeypot is that it's something that looks very appealing to a hacker. It might have vulnerable software on it. It might have a lot of ports open. It might be showing off a lot of things that a hacker might want to access. But the point of this honeypot is to capture what the attacker is trying to do. And so it's designed so that as soon as an attacker hits it, it can try to collect as much metadata as it can from the attacker. So stuff like where the message is coming from, what the message was trying to do. Sometimes if it's trying to access, say an attacker is trying to access a website and it finds like a vulnerability on a honeypot, then the honeypot might allow it to go further and keep track of how it like goes into the system and attacks it further. And so something like this is a really great way to, like, if you have millions of honeypots around the world, you can get a pretty good glance of what's happening at a daily, sort of like at a daily level. Sinkholes are another really cool one. So sinkholes don't really focus too much on trying to convince just random bots around the internet that there's something worth having. But instead, a sinkhole mimics what's called a C2 server. So C2 means command and control server. And so say you have a botnet, say you have ransomware or something like that. You have thousands of computers around the world that are infected, and each computer, during some part of the ransomware process, it needs to communicate with the server to like know where to send Bitcoin to, or like know what encryption key it should store or something like that. And so what a sinkhole is that it tells the DNS servers around the world that it is actually the server that these ransomware computers are looking for. And so if you have enough sinkholes, then as a ransomware computer is trying to communicate with this command and control server, it will get rerouted to one of the sinkholes, and the sinkholes can do further analysis on what is happening behind that malware. And so, for example, if the malware encrypts all of the things, it sends an encryption key to command and control server, and that command and control server happens to be a sinkhole, then you automatically have the key that you can give to the user. And so this is a pretty effective way of dealing with stuff like ransomware and other crypto type locks. And then the third one is shadow bans. And so I find shadow bans incredibly interesting. Now, in the context of this kind of shadow ban, the idea is that there's millions of bots, well, way more than millions, but there's tons of bots going around the internet consistently, and they're consistently accessing servers from big companies like Facebook and Twitter and so on and so forth. And so for these companies, oftentimes, instead of trying to figure out if something is a bot and then just not letting it come back, like blocking it, a better technique can be to allow the bot to keep coming back, but every time it makes a request, if we know that it's probably a bot, we can let that request take longer than normal, so the bot has to wait for a longer period of time. And further, if you know that it's a bot, you can give it a lot of false information. So what a bot might expect is when it connects to a website, it will expect either a, okay, the page loaded, or a, oh, there's no page here, or finally, there's a server problem and you're not allowed to. So these are like the 200 errors, the 400 errors, and the 500 errors. If a bot sees a 200 website, then it is likely to keep looking around. If it sees a 500, then it knows that there's something probably pretty wrong that it was able to do. And if it sees a 400, then it knows nothing's going to happen. So if you know that something is a bot, and you can keep giving it, say, 200 and 500 and 400 requests just completely randomly, then you're really not giving a lot of information to the bot, but you might convince it to stay at a decoy server rather than attacking the real server. So this is effectively just a way of, instead of banning a bot right away, letting it kind of meddle around in your system, but in a more secure place than your actual production servers. I'm just going to take a look for questions in chat. All right. Yes, Ada mentioned Air 418. I'm a teapot. Very cool, very cool. What was that 200, 500 request? And so the idea when you're making a web request is that if you make a web request and it loads the website just fine, then the server, along with the information you're getting back, it will send you a 200 code. And so it could be like 201, 202, and so on and so forth. Each one means something different. But 200 means that the request was okay. 400 means that there was an error on the user side. And so, for example, if you try to go to a website with a path that's wrong, then it will return a 400 error. It means it's a user error. And then 500 on the other hand means that it's a server error. And so if I go to somewhere and then it crashes something on the server, or it like panics on the server or whatever, then it returns a 500. So say I'm a bot, if I find that I get a 200 back, then it means I'm accessing something that could be valuable. So if I'm looking over like 1,000 different web requests or web URLs to see if I can find like some hidden folder that they have, and I get a 200 back, it means that I found something. On the other hand, if I'm doing so essentially if I'm hitting 1,000 URLs, I'm expecting that most of them are going to be 400s. They're not going to be anything because it's a user error. But if I find a 200 or a 500, it means that there's something interesting on the other side. And so then you can keep looking a little bit further. All right, I think. And then, so I'll leave some of these questions until near the end. But they are good questions. I just want to make sure it doesn't go off on too much of a tangent, because I'm very good at that. All right, so we'll take a little look at a little bit of an example. I'm just going to change my windows here. All right, are we able to see this okay? It's like a map of the world. Yeah, I think that should be good. All right. So this is a website. Now, I'm pretty sure that this is an active one, but I'm not entirely sure. But the idea behind this website is it is using stuff like honeypots and sinkholes and like other strategies to kind of keep an eye out on where things are happening. And so, for example, if a honeypot that is looking for spam email receives something, then it would come up on a list like this. Is it a black screen? Thomas is saying it's a black screen. Okay, so I think maybe just black screen for some people. All right. So this website kind of shows attacks that are coming from one country to another. Now, this doesn't imply that it's the country themselves. It's not the government that's doing something. It's just an IP in the country that is doing something. Now, this can also be like VPN IP. So maybe someone in Canada is using a VPN to somewhere in America to attack somewhere in China. And so that would be an American to China path on here. But it's kind of interesting to see what kind of stuff this is trapping like in real time. And so I know there's other programs similar to this that you can pay for, and like big companies will pay for. And these bigger programs will have much larger data sets, and you'll be able to query it for a lot of very valuable information. And so maybe if you are a very large company, you'd want to see a dashboard like this that was relative to your servers. And so, yeah, this is a pretty fun one to look at. And this is kind of just like kind of showing off what the data analytics side of hacking can sort of be like if you have a lot of telemetry and you have a lot of data like this. And so I'm going to talk about a pretty cool event near the end of this presentation called Geek Week, where I got to deal with some data just like this. All right, let's switch my screen back. right. So next up, we have what does an oopsie whoopsie look like? And so just like a small example of something going wrong in the real world, and a real world pretty close to us. So as you know, Carleton has a cybersecurity stream, and they have like you got the cybersecurity stream, you got the internet security stream, so on and so forth. However, unfortunately, some things are not under the control of the students at Carleton, and we have situations like this. You know, all that fun stuff where Carleton got hit by ransomware a couple years ago. And so that made pretty big news. Pretty unfortunate, but it's the way things be sometimes. And so essentially with something like that, the idea behind ransomware is that it hits something that's unpatched on a network, and then it can propagate quite easily. And so if the ITS at Carleton didn't update some drivers on their computer or didn't update some software, then any malware that is looking for a vulnerable version of software can pretty easily go in there and propagate across the network. And so we've seen this a couple different times with a lot of different types of ransomware. All right, so the next section. Wait, I can make money? And so let's talk about the lucrative side of cybersecurity. And so for all the people who watch the 1997 hackers and want to be just as cool as I don't know, I forgot all their names. There's like Acid Zero or something like that. All those cool kids, but making money from it and doing it legally. Oh yeah, Hackerman. If you've seen, wait no, that's like Mr. Robot. But also if you've seen Kung Fury, that's who I aspire to be. All right, so here's a quote from Guilfoyle from Silicon Valley, and so just in the context of kind of why it's important to have people working at these companies doing things. So it's not magic, it's talent and sweat. People like me ensure your packets get delivered unsniffed. So what do? I make sure that one bad config on one key component doesn't bankrupt the entire fucking company. That's what the fuck I do. And so I kind of like that one a lot, because it really describes like when you're talking to like a security person and you're like, well, like is the work that you're doing actually important? It's so difficult to understand the scope of what people in security do. So one really interesting thing about cybersecurity is that, or cybersecurity in particular when it comes to computer science and the industry, is that I think it's one of the fields in computer science that has the most available jobs right now, because there's so many companies that are looking to improve their security. I remember I think it was back in 2005 or something like that, before they even, many sites had HTTPS. It actually amazes me that it was only that short ago that interesting. It reminds very very cool that back then you can just be in a cafe literally seeing everything that everybody else does. And so yeah, so in the near future there's gonna be a ton of jobs in cybersecurity. So at different companies we have sort of an idea or a way to describe different teams or different types of people. And so we have very generally the red team and the blue team. And so the idea behind the blue team is that this is what you'll see at most companies. These are the people that will be trying to protect websites, working on improving infrastructure security, working on remediating any issues that come up, and so on and so forth. And so this is the academic side. This is the side that you'll see for most companies. Now the red team is super interesting. So the idea behind the red team is that you have hackers that are working in an ethical way that companies will hire to go in and try to hack different parts of the company. So we'll see it a little bit, the idea of bounty hunters, but also we have there's this company in Ottawa, I forget his name, but my buddy worked there for a summer, and essentially what they do is they a company will hire them, and then you'll either have them try to hack into your infrastructure remotely, or you'll have them on site trying to see what they could do. And then I've read some other really cool stories.
Yo, who's trying to buy crack?
Will, you want to fix that? All right. So
who's trying to buy crack?
with
who's trying to buy crack? I still.
All right, I'm just gonna ban him for now. You guys can fix that later. All right, cool. So with red teams, you'll have them come onto site. And so a really cool story I read was about how this company hired this guy for like a junior like accounting job, and then he had like a couple weeks to try and figure out his way into like many different systems that he shouldn't have access to. And so it's like I think I forgot if it was fiction or nonfiction, but it was a very fun read. And so I recommend looking into red team stuff more often. And so the idea of a red team and blue team is like pretty standard within the security industry. But I was reading an article the other day about a couple more teams, and so we have like this infosec wheel, which kind of describes if we were going to break it up into more. And so one of the other big ones that is pretty standard is the purple team. And so that's kind of working in between the blue team and the red team. And so as companies become more comfortable having the separation between blue team and red team, then the purple team has kind of grown from that. And so with so I have a source at the, well, many of my pages have sources, but this one kind of describes this paradigm a little bit more. And so if we look on the other side, we have the green team, the yellow team, and the orange team. And so these are the ones that deal not as heavily with the real-time stuff, but a lot of the prevention, or like a lot of the proactive prevention. And so with the green team, enhancing stuff in code ahead of time. In yellow team, building software that doesn't that is like has security in mind. And then orange team is about education and stuff. All right. So that's kind of like the look at the industry side of cybersec. Now let's take a look at sort of the more contractor side and the bounty hunter side. And so I find this one very cool. So there's a website called HackerOne. And what HackerOne does is it's a place that companies can kind of amalgamate a lot of their issue reporting in a way. So me as a like independent security researcher, I can go to a website, see if it's on HackerOne, and then if it's on HackerOne, it will tell me what parts of the website I can hack. So for example, with Facebook, maybe I can attack facebook.com, maybe I can attack their mobile app, and they will tell me what I can attack. And then if I find a vulnerability somewhere in their website, then I'm able to report it to them, and they'll be able to fix it. But then on top of that, they will often give a pretty hefty bounty for something that is found. And so the idea behind HackerOne is that we're not talking like $50 and a pizza on a Friday or something like that. We're talking like thousands and thousands of dollars. And so now for companies, though, this is like a really great proposition. And so HackerOne's website, and this slide is basically just an advertisement for HackerOne. But from the lens of a company, to have a website that kind of promotes the idea of see something, say something, is really a great option for them. Because for Facebook to pay $10,000 for someone who found access into their main like server cluster or something like that, well, that'd be way more than $10,000, but that's like an incredibly good deal for them. And so this facilitates a way for the companies to give bounties to these hunters and to find problems in real time. And so bounty hunters from all around the world are keeping an eye out on these websites with the promise that if they find something, they'll get paid. And for the company, this also means that they don't pay anybody until something is found. And so for both sides, this is a really great opportunity. And so a lot of companies embrace this, and there's still a lot of places that can't and don't. And so, for example, certain places in the government aren't able to do stuff like this. But it's definitely a really great community that is growing. And last year, in 2019 alone, HackerOne paid out $35 million in bug bounties. And this is super interesting because so there's like thousands, probably like 100,000 like hackers on the website, maybe even more, and like many different companies, probably like I'd say like, actually I'm not entirely sure. I guess in a range of like 1,000 different companies on HackerOne. I'm not entirely sure, but there's a lot of opportunity here. And so Shopify, the e-commerce company here in Ottawa, has taken like super big steps to keep up with HackerOne. So I have a friend that I'll discuss in a little bit who works at Shopify in security, and he talks a lot to me about how they integrate with HackerOne and how they'll have an event that they invite some of the best hackers from HackerOne to come out to, and they'll bring all the hackers together. They'll do like a weekend of hacking on a lot of different items at Shopify, and they'll often give them extra access that they might not have otherwise, and then like pay out for the people who find stuff. And so I think Like if I'm not mistaken, like the last I heard, there was like an event and they paid out like 125,000 in one day to all of these different hackers, which is pretty awesome. So kind of just like another story about a friend and I. So that's me on the left and my buddy Matt on the right. And so Matt, this is a picture from UAuta Hack a couple years ago when Matt was a co-lead, and I was giving a talk on mutant potatoes and like a spicy eating challenge. It was pretty interesting. But Matt, he works for GitHub in the security section, or in the security department. And so I get to hear a lot of really cool stories about the work that he does, and like the type of infrastructure that GitHub has to deal with. And so GitHub also has a bug bounty program. And so I got to kind of hear about that as well, which is really nifty. Now, let's take a look at Matt's HackerOne. And so Matt has found 2 separate vulnerabilities, one at Slack and one on Ruby on Rails. And so with both of them, he was able to disclose it to the company. He was able to describe what it was. And with the Slack one, he got a bounty of $500 for like a pretty small thing. It was pretty interesting. And so if we take a look at what the problem was, as it's described here, the weakness is improper input validation, and it's got a severity of 4.3 out of 10, I believe. Maybe out of something else, I don't know. And then we can also see that the visibility is disclosed. And so what disclosed means is that after a vulnerability has been found and resolved, the company can choose to either disclose it or not, which means that it'll become visible to the public and anybody can read about it. And so this got disclosed November of last year, and I was super excited to read it and hear about it from him. And so essentially this kind of so Matt will go in and describe his process of what he did to find it, and describe the impact. And so in his first comment, he kind of described what he had found so far, and then in a second comment he described a little bit more what else could be added to it, and then further on he showed a video of proof of concept of what was actually happening. And so I think this is a super awesome ecosystem in which anybody who has the ability to break and enter in places that they shouldn't can talk in this super casual way with companies and get things resolved. And so another friend of mine, Jack, there at the bottom, he works also in security, but he works at Shopify. And so he also does a lot of stuff with HackerOne, and I believe of recent he's been doing sort of like an integration of HackerOne and Ruby on Rails. And so I'm just going to, I think I still have the screen open. Let me see 1 second. Yeah, so I'm just going to pull up a HackerOne screen here. All right. So this is the other one that Matt found about Ruby on Rails, and so it had to do with, I believe, improperly understanding what cookies are on the server side. And so when you prefix stuff with host and secure, then it would do some funky stuff. And so again, Matt describes what's going on. But the interesting thing is that Jack was actually the one to deal with this on the Ruby on Rails side. And so in this ecosystem where Jack is working on sort of the blue team side and Matt is working on the red team side, Matt's from Ottawa, Jack's from Carleton, and I just think it's super cool that they're both working on like these super like low-level security types of things in the industry together. But they have to stay professional, and so they call each other Jack and hey at Fletch299. They don't say hey bud or whatever, but that's how it is. All right, I'm just switch my screen back. All right, I'm gonna take a quick look for questions. Wait till my screen switch back. Wait, did I change my Discord? No. Okay, whatever. Maybe because I full screen my screen. Can we see the Shopify slide? Okay, cool. Just taking a look through questions. So someone asked, is it harder to be on the blue team or red team? So I think that's a very good question. When you're on the blue team, you have to prevent against things that you don't know are there. When you're on the red team, you have to try and find things from what is essentially a black box. You don't get to see in how any of the code works, and you have to figure that all out for yourself. And so both of them require 2 separate approaches. And I think when you do stuff like CTFs, you kind of find what stuff you like to do. So maybe you like reading a lot about this one piece of infrastructure, and you'll find that you like become an expert in Kubernetes or something like that. And then you want to be on the blue team for Kubernetes because you know everything about securing it, and you find all these problems at a company, you go fix it. Now, on the other hand, maybe you learn everything about Kubernetes and you're like, wait a second, all of these companies are insecure about it. So, and I think there's a lot of people who are on blue teams who also do red team stuff. So yeah, for example, with Matt, he's blue team at GitHub, but red team wherever else he can find vulnerabilities. And at the same time, like if you're working in the security industry and you have enough knowledge and potential to find bugs and you can be called a bounty hunter, then like how cool is that? All right, so number 4, how do I learn? So we're gonna take a quick look at the ways that you can get into the cybersecurity world yourself. And so first off, for students in the internet security stream or like the networking stream might have a little bit of overlap with this, but you have a lot of potential already to be exposed to this through school. And so you get principles of computer networking in 3rd year, and then in 4th year you get computer system security and applied cryptography. And so I took computer system security last year sometime, and then I took applied cryptography. Well, I'm taking it right now. And these are really awesome courses. Like one of the reasons I really like game dev is it's a way to be creative with the code that you're learning in assignments. And then on the other hand, with cryptography, it's a way that you get to be very like mathematical and theoretical in a way that isn't necessarily like discrete math. And so it's like a very fun side of comp sci, I think. And so,
Forrest?
yeah.
I think your stream switched over to like the presenter view.
Lol, nice.
Yeah.
All right, cheers.
Let's get back to full screen.
Yeah. Oh shoot, that was not the button. Okay, there we go. All right, all you missed is a nice big slide of comp 3032. Are we good now?
Yep.
Hey, very cool, very cool. All right. So this is so Geek Week is another opportunity that students have. It's not hosted this year, I think, but in future years it will, and in past years it has. And so with Geek Week, the idea is it's a week-long event that's held by the government, and they invite 200 security professionals to the Libraries and Archives of Canada, and there's 4 different teams that work on 4 different projects. And so 2 years ago, I worked on a cyber health dashboard, and so this is a Tableau dashboard that essentially did a lot of things that are very similar to what we saw with like the world map, where we get a lot of telemetry from companies around the world and then other Canadian security agencies on what's happening with different companies around Canada and what's happening with different like endpoints like honeypots and stuff like that, and then display all of this information in a very like nice and usable way for the companies. And so that was pretty cool, but data science isn't too much where like I excel, and so that was like a very cool experience to be exposed to it. But then last year I did a team called Retro Hunt, and this one was very, very cool. And so essentially we had terabytes and terabytes of malware, and so the government has like so many archives of malware, it's crazy. But we got given a certain amount of malware, and we were tasked with finding a better way to index it. And so when you have like thousands and thousands of executables and binaries, it's very difficult to do like a control F and find where you might have one piece of code in one of the other pieces of malware. And so with Retro Hunt, we took all of this malware and indexed it so that it would be much easier to do small, what are called n-gram searches. So an n-gram is like a little slice of like 5 digits long. So like let's imagine that you have like 1,000-digit number, like and then you like split up into all different like 5 slices, and then I can easily, like if I index that, I can find the slice that I want pretty easily. But instead of numbers, we're using hex, and the n-grams were I think about 4 bytes that we were working with. But this would mean that you'd be able to search this entire corpus of malware very easily for certain, maybe like if you're looking for a flag or if you're looking for some very small piece of code, you'd be able to find it a lot easier. And so another way, so we've explored like academic, like getting into security. We've explored kind of like some of the events you can go to, and then this is another type of event. So a CTF, or a capture flag, the idea behind it is that you participate in a competition in which you're trying to find as many flags as you can within a set amount of time. And so what a flag might be is You like have to hack into a computer and then go to a certain directory, and then there'll be like a flag file, and then the flag inside will say like flag, you're so good at Linux or something like that, and then you submit that flag for points. Or you might be like on a website and then you have to log into an account that you're not supposed to log into, and then you'll find a flag on their like profile page or something like that. And so CTFs are a really great way to experiment with many different types of challenges in a very secure environment. And so you'll be doing like the types of hacking that you see in movies and stuff like that, but in a very controlled environment. And so you also learn a really great mindset behind problem solving when doing these types of CTFs. And so after this talk, in like about 15 minutes, I'll be hosting a CTF on the Carleton Cybersecurity Club Discord. And so if you want to give some of these problems a try yourself, you can hop over there. And many of the challenges that I've put up there and I'll be adding there are pretty entry level. And so if you come in without any experience whatsoever, you can probably get up and running with some like simple crypto, some simple I'm not sure what other types of stuff will be up there, but we'll see when we get there. And then I might run a workshop over there to kind of talk through some of the challenges. All right. And so here's an example of a CTF that I went to. I went last year, and then this year they hosted a virtual one. But NorthSec takes place in Montreal, and it's a security conference. And then at the end, for a couple of days, they have a massive capture the flag competition. And so it takes place in this really big building near the old port of Montreal, and there's like 600 people that were there last time. And so it was a really amazing time hanging out with that many like amazing security people from around Canada and around the world. And so my team didn't do too hot. I always make fun of Jack because he's there with Shopify, and then we're always ahead of them like at the very beginning for the first 10 minutes, and then they like double our score by the end. So I like use that first 10 minutes to make fun of him, and then that's about it. But yeah, so that's sort of the ways to get into cybersecurity, and so that's pretty much it that I have for this talk. So thank you for coming out, and you can contact me with that email or just ping me on Discord. I'll go through some of the questions now, and then in about 10 minutes I'll make sure that CTF is running, and then I'll just stay back here if anybody has any audio. Actually, no, I'll head over to the other Discord, and then if anybody has any audio questions, they can ask over there. So if you have any questions, either put it in the Discord, I'll read that back a little bit, or actually no, more efficiently just put it in the Google thing, because I'll try to read through that. All right, first question by Robert. Yeet. Indeed, Robert, indeed. All right. Aiden says, if you're a real hacker, name every password. No. Eric says, is a prize for a CTF? No, because I thought of it yesterday. There's hardly even a CTF, I'll be honest. But there's some good challenges up there that I came up with, real on the fly. So Ian Webster said, how do you recommend to start learning to hack? So as I mentioned for myself, I think that the best way is kind of going out to these CTF events and trying to expose yourself to as many ideas as possible, because for a lot of them, they will not come easy and it will not be clear right away. But these are ideas that you can't really learn by reading a textbook. A lot of them you have to practice. So for example, you can learn cryptography and you can learn all the math behind it, but it's very difficult to learn every single application that you might see it in, whereas when you practice CTFs, you become a lot more familiar with areas that you see it. And so that's why I recommend learning through CTFs. Oh dang! The Carleton Cybersecurity Club will send stickers to the top 5 winners. That's actually hype. So there are prizes. I lied. Okay. What age is a good age to get into hacking? And so I love stories about like 10-year-olds who are good at hacking. And I was at this CTF Hackfest. It was at Carleton like 2 years ago or something like that. And there was a dad with his like son. His son was like 10 or something like that. And it amazed me with the stuff that the kid was saying, because he knew more about Linux than I did. Maybe he didn't know more, but for the stuff that he was doing, everything was just so much more clear to him and more vivid to him. And so it was amazing to see kind of like his mindset behind solving some of these challenges. And so I don't think it's necessarily inaccessible to anybody. I think that there are a lot of different layers to cybersecurity and everything like that. But entering it, I think, can be accessible to anybody. Wasn't the site vulnerable to SQL injection? I'm not sure which site Robert's talking about. Maybe Carlton or something like that. If we're talking about like if Carlton's vulnerable, yes, Carlton's very vulnerable. I'm surprised that we've only heard about one ransomware in the last couple of years. It's pretty yikes, like Carlton Central and stuff like. So when I started, you I don't know if the pin is still the same now. I don't enter my pin ever. But you entered like a 7-digit pin to log in, 6-digit pin, and it defaulted to your birthday or something like that, and that really annoyed me. And then I think there was also something about how they were storing passwords in plain text, which was also terrible. Elias said, how do you hack into the past? So I can't, so that's out of the scope of this talk, but watch Kung Fury. Assuming you've partaken in HackerOne, how's your experience? And so I'm always on the lookout for like bugs and stuff like that. I love, like, if I learn something about where like I've done something wrong and it might be insecure, then I'll go check like editor sites and see if they kind of do stuff in a different way. And so the other day I was looking with a buddy, and he found something on Discord that was like interesting-ish, and so we submitted a bug report, but they said that it was expected behavior. But essentially it allowed you to, so it had to do with URI links, and so when you put in a URL, you click it, it goes to a website. If you put in a URI, then the operating system handles it, and then if the operating system allows you to do weird things with the URI, then essentially you can put a link in Discord and then tell it to do things on the operating system. And then Discord said, since we have that, oh, do you want to do this? Are you sure you want to do this? Like that button you have to click beforehand, then they're like, oh, it's not a problem. They have to click the button, so it's their own fault if they do this. But there's some pretty funky stuff you can do with URIs, so I don't know. But other than that, with HackerOne, I love reading the Shopify like bug bounties. It's super cool to see like some of the people who made like $25,000 on one, like the path that they took, because oftentimes when you go into a bug bounty, you don't know if like you found something that was incredibly valuable. Like some of the first message will be like, hey, I found this, it might be bad, and then 2 days later it'll be like, oh, I kept playing with this and I found that you can go much further and you can access this server and you can get root privileges and so on and so forth. And so I think once I'm a bounty hunter myself, then I can tell you more on that. But until then, I can say that it's very fun to read. Doesn't using HackerOne expose companies to risk? So that is a very good question. So if we think of the principles of HackerOne, we have to remember that the point of HackerOne is so that people who see a problem have the way to tell the company that they found a problem. And so without HackerOne, you'd have the ability to still go to everywhere on different websites, and then maybe you found a vulnerability. It's a lot more difficult to know what you would do with it. And so I think that would encourage much less kosher like results from people who found bugs. Now, on the other hand, if you give them a way to communicate directly with the security team at that company, then you are exposing the company to being searched more, but you're also giving the company the ability to fix the problems that are found. Can't see the full Shopify slide. F indeed. Oh man, yeah, that was a big oof. So the slides be posted? Yeah, I'll post them probably in Discord. I'll probably just like save them to my GitHub. But the thing is, like after, like I still have all my template slides that are like from before, a lot more about different planets, and so I'll have to clean them up a little bit, but it's how it be. Is it cool to just be at the CTF and watch and learn? Absolutely. So with the CTF, when I say compete, all you really do is make an account and you can click around and do whatever you like. And so whether or not you submit any flags or whether or not you solve any challenges, that is all cool. You can go there and check out everything that that is there. What languages are primarily used for these types of activities? Is there any sort of technology I should be learning if I want to get into this type of industry? And so for hacking in particular, I really recommend doing a lot of it in Python, because there's a ton of libraries in Python that are specifically for hacking and penetration testing. Now, another really great tool that I'd recommend is Kali Linux, which comes pre-installed with many, many tools that are ready to use out of the box. Now, you can do a lot of this stuff with other languages, but it's really just like, as long as you can make HTTP requests from a language, and you can really do a lot of things with it, and you can pretty much find any web vulnerability just through that. But that being said, if Python has a library that automatically like sets up all your headers and makes a connection for you and holds a connection for however long you want and so on and so forth, then that can be very valuable as well. What would be the equivalent of Hello World and hacking tools? That's a very good question. Let me think on that. I'll come back to you. Are there any textbooks you would recommend to get started? I'm not super a textbook person, so I think just practicing and playing is the best way to go. Now, actually, what I would compare a textbook to is that there's these websites called stuff like Hack the Site, or I forget what the site that has like the virtual machines is called, but essentially, or Hack the Box. And so you'll get this virtual machine, you run it on your computer, and then you have to try to hack into it. And so it's on your own computer, you're hosting it. It doesn't have any communication anywhere else. But as you progress along and you get further and further, and then you eventually get root access, then that's like a really great way of learning stuff, I think. What are some beginner level CTFs? And so there's this really cool website called CTF Time. I'm gonna make a note of that so I write it down for later. So CTF Time shows you all of the CTFs that are going on around the world right now, and it shows you also a lot of write-ups about CTFs. And so say you go and do a weekend CTF that someone in Russia is hosting. Then after you might solve one challenge, and then you tried 10 other challenges and you weren't able to. But you can read the write-ups from people who were able to solve them and see what their thought processes were. And so like that's really like an amazingly great way of learning, because trying and failing so if you try and fail but then learn afterwards how to fix that, then that, like, in my opinion, is so much better than like reading a textbook and learning some theory in a course. So beginner level CTFs, Hack All the Things is often pretty beginner level, but also just look around CTF Time and see what people are hosting. Knowing what you do now, what are some of the extra steps someone in CompSci can take to secure their information aside from secure passwords? So in this day and age, websites do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. If you have Google Drive, your stuff is pretty secure on there. One thing that I've been working on doing more is making sure that like my computers have like encrypted hard drives as well. Because that means that unless you have the password to boot it, nobody can get in. And so that's like really a great next step, especially for portable laptops that you have, because most of your laptops, actually no, Macs are encrypted, but most other laptops won't have like disk encryption natively on them. And so that means that if I take your laptop, I can just pull out your hard drive and have everything that you own, which is pretty interesting. Maybe you should fix the issues, Hackerman. True. How has working in the industry helped you expand your knowledge compared to CTFs? So I've worked at startups, and I've done research, and I've done contract work. And so I think one of the biggest things is that my understanding of hacking and computer science really goes a long way in being able to understand how I should design software and web apps and so on and so forth. And so instead of taking an approach that could architecturally lead to like a disaster later, or like, rather like architecture that will lead to a security disaster later, I'll be able to further back in the development process know that I'm going down the wrong road or something like that. Now CTFs though, like every time I go to a CTF and try like something that I don't know, like I go to B-Sides, which happens here in Ottawa in November, but probably not this year. They like the 2 years that I went, they had radio challenges, and so you got this little radio receiver and you had to do a whole bunch of different challenges, and I don't know anything about radio, but opening the software and learning about how to like decode different types of radio, decode video in radio, how to locate radio devices and so on and so forth, like that's such a cool experience. Can you send the link of the Hack the Box? If you just Google Hack the Box, that would probably be the easiest. All right, new top question. Oh yeah, prizes. Oh yeah. All right, there's a question. What's the hello world of hacking tools? Of hacking tools itself is probably like Kali Linux, because like that's like the standard for tools. But if you're gonna do something like hacking that's hello world, like XSS is like pretty much like a pretty standard one on like websites. But yeah, I can't think of too much else. All right, I'm taking a look at Discord chat if there's anything here. All right, there's a lot of memes, so I don't think I'm going to find too much content here. All right, whatever. All right, so that's pretty much it for the tech talk. If you head over to the other Discord, this Carleton Cybersecurity Club, I will be in there in voice, and then I'll give further instructions on how to continue on the CTF. So thank you, everybody, for coming out, and I'll leave it to any of the board of directors if they want to say anything.